Yo guys, what's going on? I know I've said this before, but this time it really is, I'm doing something different this time. In today's episode of Cozy Retro Gaming Corner, I'm going to do something that I never thought I would do, and it differs vastly from my usual content. So normally, if you watch my videos, I'm just kind of going around thrifting, game stores, yard sales, tips, tricks, things of that nature. But on today's episode, I'm actually doing a bit of a documentary. And that documentary is on the history of violence and gore in video games and how it kind of affected, the video game rating systems, how video games are today. Did those games make, violent criminals violent and do violent things, or were they just inherently violent already? These are the questions we're going to try to find an answer to, and we're going to have some fun along the way. We've all been playing violent video games our whole lives. I mean, I know I have. We love these games, right? They're unavoidable. This is what teenage boys and girls want to play growing up. They're super duper fun, and there's no, getting around it. We love that stuff, and as Americans, we eat it up. Also, have you guys seen these? They are NES coasters. I got these off Amazon for $10. They're sweet. They actually look like the NES cartridges. They're amazing. Well, anyways, without any further ado, let's dive on in to the guts and gory glory of gore and violence in retro video games and video games in general. And as always, guys, thank you so much for watching, liking, subscribing, commenting. It means a lot to me. I know I'm small scale, but man, I have so much fun doing this, and I look forward to making a new video every week. So thank you guys. Have a phenomenal week.
Self-sabotage in its face. I cannot believe it when I'm moving at this pace. I seem to deceive. I'm all by myself. Yeah, I wanna take this to ride. Why I come back home? That's why I come back home. That's why I come back home.
Finally tonight, the latest video game craze to sweep the United States and Japan. It's called Nintendo.
11 world-class contenders. Take them down with your controller, beat them all, and you've got a shot at Tyson's title.
The year was 1986. The year Nintendo stormed America with games such as Duck Hunt, Super Mario, and Hogan's Alley. And man, were things looking up for the video game market. The great video game crash in 1983, speculated to have come about from a rushed release of E.T. on the Atari 2600, was over, and a new era of gaming was hence ushered in with the force of 1,000 hand grenades.
There it is. You think you guys are going to have fun with that?
In the 1970s, Nintendo wasn't the mega company that you know and love today. Oh no, they were a relatively small company that made novelty toys and trading cards. That is, until Nintendo president Hiroshi Yamauchi gave a young game designer a chance. You might know the guy. Shigeru Miyamoto? Ring any bells? See, in the early 1980s, Miyamoto played a major role in helping Nintendo explode into the scene with the arcade classic Donkey Kong. But that was only the tip of the iceberg. Upon release of the Nintendo Entertainment System, Miyamoto would be Nintendo's knight in shining armor due to his creation of Legend of Zelda and Super Mario Bros., the latter of which almost single-handedly sold the NES 7 million consoles in 1 year alone. Guys, at this moment, you might be starting to ask yourself, why is he talking about the NES, the release of the NES and its early video games? Well, I'm going to tell you why. Because with the release of the Nintendo Entertainment System, and getting away from the older stuff, Atari, television, there was more capabilities for graphics, more sprites, more colors. And with all those things comes more violence and more gore, because now they have the capability to do so. But guys, I know you don't want to continue to talk about plumbers wearing blue overalls or donkeys. No, let's get into the meat and potatoes of this stuff. You want violence and gore, and that is exactly what we're going to get into now. What you really want is... Fight! It was 1992, and Midway leg swept the nation and made red waves with its arcade smash hit, Mortal Kombat. Kids all over America were searching under car mats and couch cushions for quarters just to wait in line at the arcade for a chance to rip out spines and uppercut their opponents into oblivion. Yeah, guys, I think it's safe to say creators Ed Boon and John Tobias really struck gold on this one. You see, up until this point, there was some gore and graphic violence in games, sure, but nothing like this. And with the help of digitized graphics and mocap, the violence felt so real it might jump out of the screen and uppercut you through the arcade ceiling. Before the introduction of Mortal Kombat, there was definitely some gory games chock full of violence, like Atari's Halloween, Smash TV, Nintendo's Chiller, and Splatterhouse on the TurboGrafx. And they all had their fair share of gore, of course, with violence included, but the difference is, these games weren't hits. At least not to the same degree that Mortal Kombat was. Kids loved it. Parents hated it. I mean, for God's sakes, I remember being a young kid standing in the waiting area at Chi-Chi's, just staring at the Mortal Kombat arcade cabinet that they had shoved into the corner. And while I stood there in that waiting room, awaiting my subpar Mexican food, that Mortal Kombat arcade cabinet filled me with a few emotions. It filled me with excitement, fear, but mostly filled me with curiosity.
The game is causing quite a sensation.
Mortal Kombat 4. A new Mortal Kombat hits a new level of violence.
Meet Mortal Kombat 4, the latest horror in violent video games for your kids.
Incredible, isn't it? That a video game could leave so many people disgusted and infuriated that it was now a topic on multiple news stations for multiple months, from multiple anchors in multiple states. You see, the widespread panic spawned from Mortal Monday, which, by the way, was the name given to the day the game would launch on multiple platforms. The panic was never over the blood, the gore, the violence. It was more so about the fatalities. I mean, when you were done pounding your opponent's head like a chicken cutlet, you literally murdered them, and in the worst ways. For the early 90s, this was some brutal stuff, man.
Sounds like a pretty thrilling game, and this is the kind of violence that critics are pretty worried about. Instead of chopping the opponent's head off, he simply disappears. Sales dropped 40%.
They came up and said, what'd you do to the game? It's no fun anymore.
Kids are saying chill out to worried parents.
I think TV personally influences more than a video game. A video game is a video game.
The bottom line, parents wonder if kids can separate fantasy from the real thing.
I'll tell your folks, buy me, Bone Storm, or go to hell!
Buy me, Bone Storm, or go to hell!
Comes to holiday presents, but are you paying attention to the ratings?
The good old ESRB. The ruiner of kids' hopes and dreams who were wishing to rent a mature rated game on a Friday night from their local Blockbuster. Everything was right as rain. You had your soda, your watermelon Sour Jacks, maybe some popcorn. But instead of the latest gory shooting game, you had a meager teen rated one, overshadowed by his older brother, M.
Thank you, Senator Cole, and thanks to all the members of the panel. Just hearing what you've said now, we're also repelled. We're disgusted by this material.
Yes, sir. Here we have the 1993 U.S. Senate hearings on video game violence. You heard that right. People were so up in arms over the subject that congressional hearings were held in its honor, with Senators Joe Lieberman and Herb Kohl at the forefront. And guess what? They were kind enough to invite Sega and Nintendo along for a days-long talking to. Would Sega and Nintendo put on the gloves and defend their titles? Or would they be doomed for all eternity, only receiving permission to make games about sugar plum fairies and butterflies? Well, they kind of won and lost. So, out of this, the only negative thing that really happened, which wasn't all that negative for Sega and Nintendo and other video game consoles alike, was the Video Game Rating Act of 1994. And that's where it started. Before that, games had no ratings. It's kind of crazy if you ask me. Violent video games in general were under fire at this trial, but the number one culprit was a campy, live-action movie game called Night Trap. I'm sure you've all heard of this. It was a silly game involving vampires that came to abduct and take blood from their victims, and it was released on the Sega CD. And in my personal opinion, it's kind of too corny to be taken seriously. But they did. They definitely did. Let me know what you think. And thus, the ESRB official game rating program was born. And everything worked out. Dads could continue to practice creative freedom when it came to making their video games, and parents were better able to keep potentially harmful material away from their children. But not long after, a real-world tragedy would strike, one that definitely wouldn't make it any easier for violent games and their creators.
See them there. Between 10 and 15 students who were trapped inside Columbine High School.
On April 20th, 1999, 11:19 a.m., Columbine, Colorado, life stood still. I was young. I was really young. I guess I was probably 9 years old, but I remember this happening. I remember not understanding or being able to grasp the magnitude of what had taken place, but I do remember Eric Harris and Dylan Klebold murdered 12 students and one teacher in a senseless and spineless act of violence. And why? Nobody's ever going to know. Nobody really knew why those teenagers did what they did, but as you can probably guess, video games were taking it on the chin once again, specifically id Software's first-person shooter Doom. Rumors spread like wildfire that Dylan and Eric used the game's map-creating ability to create a mock-up of Columbine High in which they practiced their murderous agenda on, but this was later proven false. They did in fact play the game, but so did a million other teens across the United States that didn't do anything violent. Well guys, what's your opinion on this? Do you guys think that Doom as a video game made Eric and Dylan do those heinous acts? I don't think so. And do you think it slowed down the success of the video game Doom? No. As a matter of fact, it had the opposite effect. John Romero and Tom Hall had their hands full with this one. Actually, when they first released the game and the demos, the servers kept crashing. They couldn't even keep up. It had action, it was fast-paced, it was gory, violent, and it had a killer soundtrack. Guys, Doom was here to stay, and violent video games were becoming more violent than ever. Graphics were getting better and better and better, and thus allowed for even more realistic violence and gore in video games. If parents and senators were ticked off before, well, what would happen next would literally cause steam to shoot out of their ears. Introducing the PlayStation era. PS1 and PS2 were just absolute controversy machines, specifically regarding two main games. So let's grab our knuckle dusters, plastic bags, hijack a car so we can drive full speed right into the PlayStation era. Let me set a mood for you guys. It's Christmas morning. You wake up and immediately run downstairs donning your best festive pajamas. White Christmas warmly humming in the background. And presents tucked under the tree. Lots and lots of presents. You eagerly rip the wrapping paper off each and every one of them like a banshee, leaving Dad to stuff the shreds into a garbage bag as if he was a pillow maker. Then, to your wondrous surprise, you open the last gift, and it's a PlayStation. A beautiful, beautiful PlayStation. This was my experience, and I wouldn't trade it for the world. Sony set the bar high for more mature gaming with the PS1's release, with titles such as Metal Gear Solid, Tomb Raider, Tekken, and Resident Evil, just to name a few. And just a handful of years down the road, Sony and a few of its games would make waves all over the world once again. Flash forward to October 26, 2000, the Sony PS2 hits North American markets with a crash and would go on to set the record of the best-selling console of all time.
Good afternoon, I'm Donna Gregory.
And I'm Heidi Deja. There are waiting lists and tickets just to stand in line and get a chance to buy PlayStation 2. That is PlayStation 2, the hottest game to hit the market, and it arrives in the U.S. tomorrow. But some people are standing in line already trying to buy this toy.
Give it to me like
Oh yeah now. PS2 was kicking booty hole and taking names. Sony's second console was absolutely dominating the market, and it seemed to be that there was absolutely no chance of stopping them from becoming a console giant for the rest of forever. The Sony PS2 was on top of the goddamn world, and for good reason, considering they sold 155 million units worldwide. I'd like to imagine at this point, the Sony executives filled a pool with gold coins and pulled a Scrooge McDuck. Now with whopping console sales and new hardware came new games, and the Sony PS2 definitely didn't lack in the gory violence department. In fact, it seemed to almost embrace it.
That's what you said to the bullshit that you fed. I should be dead. Was that pain just a lie? Leave me honest. Time goes on. I'm left unread. Broken heart, emoting, abusive for rejection. I confuse it with perfection. Oh, it's astounding.
Hey, where you learn that from?
Grand Theft Auto 3?
Word? Can I borrow that?
You got a PlayStation 2?
Nah, I got Gamecast.
Gamecast? Well, there's GameCube and then there's Dreamcast. What you got?
Well, I said I got Gamecast, man. Damn, I can't afford it.
My bad.
Experience has taught me that a man like you can be very loyal for the right price.
Let's teach these would-be tough guys what it means to be a tough guy. If he squeals, I squeal!
You're an efficient killer.
Anything you want.
Grand Theft Auto.
Grand Theft Auto.
Like Grand Theft Auto.
Grand Theft Auto.
Grand Theft Auto.
When Grand Theft Auto 3 by Rockstar Games hit store shelves on October 23, 2001, the uproar was literally heard around the world. It was plastered in newspaper articles, television spots, and the focal point of every anti-video game activist from here to Timbuktu. But that didn't stop it from becoming the best-selling video game of 2001 and selling 14.5 million copies by March 2008. Sitting in his bedroom in 6th grade, my friend Sean and I watched his older cousin play GTA 3 for the first time. And holy frick, I had never seen anything like it before. The living, breathing Liberty City, the absolute freedom, the action, the excitement, the violence, the hookers. We were entranced by what we were seeing, and I'll never forget it. Good old-fashioned horror films. They've been around since the mid-1890s. I mean, shoot, Le Manoir du Diable, also known as House of the Devil, came out in 1898. Horror films aren't a new genre by any means. But what happens when you combine horror snuff with a video game? Well, Rockstar gets an absolute verbal beatdown. That's what flippin' happens. Manhunt, Manhunt, Manhunt. Released on November 18th, 2003, Manhunt hit shelves just as quickly as it got ripped off of them. Stores all around the US discontinued sales of this video game due to the gratuitous violence and overall dark nature of this. Most notably, Target, or Target as I like to call it. If Rockstar thought they were under fire after the release of GTA 3, they had another thing coming. After all, Manhunt was dubbed a murder simulator, which is absolutely stupid. You play as James Earl Cash, a death row inmate who gets a second chance so long as he partakes in a twisted director's snuff film. And snuff people out he does. And James Cash leaves a heavy trail of blood all over Carcer City, all the way until the filthy finale. Manhunt is by far the most controversial and violent game I can think of, and I'm about to show you why in a second. Well, enjoy these next clips. If you're squeamish, I'd probably look away right about now. Well, guys, that was my brief retrospective in history on violence and gore in video games. It's crazy to think that we started off as innocently as eating white dots and avoiding ghosts, to stomping on mushrooms' heads in the hopes of getting some booty from Princess Peach, all the way to current day where shooting people in the face and stomping aliens' heads through the floor is the norm. Yeah, I think it's safe to say that the simple and innocent days of gaming are gone. That's okay. As all things do with time, video games are evolving into something much bigger than they were in their infancy. Well, guys, thanks for tuning in. I truly hope you enjoyed watching that video as much as I enjoyed making it. I think I'm going to try to make videos like this more often because I just had a blast doing it. Also, on a final note, have you guys tried the Peeps Pepsi? I can't figure out if it tastes delicious or if it tastes kind of like licking the floor of a Halloween spirit store. Anyways, thanks for tuning in. Have a great week.